Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Tuesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. Don't forget the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea City. A lot of stuff to get to. The end of NFL Week 13 was last night. A couple of lessons we could take away from that game. Plus, the Sixers won in not regulation. They had to go overtime again. How many times did this team go overtime this year? It's only been, what, basically a quarter of the season. The team just keeps going to overtime every couple of weeks, it seems like. Another big game by Joel Embiid in overtime. So the team's trying to survive, I guess, at this point. So we'll talk more NBA coming up tonight at 6:20. NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson joins us coming up at 6:20 because there's a lot of rumor, a lot of speculation, a lot of they said, he said, they think, what maybe. We'll get some clarity with Brandon Scoopy Robinson, NBA insider for Bally Sports, coming up at 6:20 tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Right now, I want to start with the game last night because last night, aside from the fact that it was almost a preview of the Army-Navy game because the Patriots threw the ball 3 times and ran in almost 50, it's the fact that last night proved to everyone why the Sixers, the Eagles, I should say, got my sports mix up there, why the Eagles can make the postseason. The league is being forced into another shift. This happens in sports all the time. In sports, you have to evolve. You have to adapt or you will die. You will fail. You will be fired. You will not have a job anymore. It's very simple. And when it comes to what we saw last night, that is the apex of the revolution of the run game. The New England Patriots went into Buffalo in a rainstorm. Well, snowstorm technically, but they went into there and said, all right, we understand that throwing the ball tonight is not ideal. Even though the Bills kept trying to do it, despite part of it's because Josh Allen is a howitzer for an arm, and he can just cut through things pretty easily as a thrower. But still, you went in that game last night. You knew you had to win a certain way. Running the ball does 2 things. One, it allows you to win the time of possession. You play keep away from the other team's offense. Number 2, running the ball allows the offensive linemen to be the aggressors. They're not backpedaling. They don't have to deal with the pass rush. They can just go out there and assert their own dominance on the other team. So last night, the Patriots, in crazy weather conditions, so crazy that the Buffalo kicker couldn't kick a field goal. He kicked it straight down the middle, and it got yanked to the left. By the way, that was an amazing call by Kevin Harlan when I heard that on the radio last night. That was great. Harlan was amazing last night. I think Harlan was having more fun with the game than anybody else was actually describing it. But I digress. When you run the ball 46 times and average 4.8 yards per rush attempt, you're doing it because the league is built on stopping the passing game. The NFL is not built to stop the run game anymore. So, as a result, you are going in to every week if you have a run game with the advantage. The Eagles can make the playoffs solely because they are the team that can run the ball and other teams can't stop them. Now, a big part of that, though, is Jalen Hurts. And this is where we circle it all back to the Hurts-Minshew conversation. I understand that Minshew looks a certain way, acts a certain way, talks a certain way that is appealing to people. But he did what he did on the field against the Jets, and I can't give him a ton of credit. In sports, you have to follow the trend if you want to be successful. And the trend right now is to run the ball if you can. If you have the offensive linemen to run the ball and run the ball consistently, you got to stick with it. When you have a chance to build on the success that you have had, you can't not do it just because somebody else isn't doing it. Just because the Chargers have Justin Herbert doesn't mean you should be doing what the Chargers offense is doing. You have to customize your team, your success to what works for you. And right now, you can have fun by winning games running the ball. I understand that we are in a league where everyone is enamored with the quarterback. And we had this conversation yesterday about going back and forth about the quarterback and who should be the quarterback, who should not be the quarterback, etc. But guess what? What's more important? Winning the game or looking a certain way on the field? The Patriots said, we don't care how we look on the field. And by the way, the New England Patriots are now 6-0 on the road this year. Does that sound familiar at all? A team with more road wins than home wins? What a concept. Oh, that's right. That would be the Eagles too. The Philadelphia Eagles this year, 5-3 on the road, 1-4 at home. The New England Patriots, 6-0 on the road, 3-4 at home. The New England Patriots plus minus differential is plus 150. The Philadelphia Eagles, plus 146. It seems like the run game works. Teams that have won 5 or more home games have made the playoffs 80% of the time, per ESPN stats and info, per Mike Gill. So there is a formula for success in the NFL. There's a precedent. Just because running the ball is not aesthetically pleasing or doesn't appeal to certain people's sensibilities doesn't mean it's not a good idea. I think the Patriots proved last night that there is a way to win games in the NFL. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Download it now from the Apple App Store or Google Play for all your latest on the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, high school sports in South Jersey, and more on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can listen to 97.3 ESPN wherever you go in the world, including the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Flyers hockey, and more right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle. And we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. Coming up at 6:20, we'll get more into the NBA. Latest on the Sixers, Damian Lillard, Portland, and more. NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson joins us at 6:20 tonight. Of course, Game Night being brought to you by friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. With the holiday season in full swing, why don't you have some fun and experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get in on all the games you love at the FanDuel Sportsbook, conveniently located right off the boardwalk at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Yes, how about those 76ers? You know, you watch Joel Embiid and you realize how amazing he is. But you also watch Joel Embiid and you realize how little support he has around him. This is now multiple games where he has basically been the lone source of scoring at times for long stretches. The Sixers had to overcome basically -7 on turnovers last night. They had to overcome a Charlotte team that was shorthanded, but yet still found a way to win 2 out of the 4 main quarters last night. Charlotte won the first quarter, they won the third quarter, and then they won the fourth quarter, and you still had to go to overtime, and you only won 27-24. I think the reason why you need to make a trade isn't because you need to get rid of Ben Simmons. It's because Joel Embiid needs help. I think that it's becoming very clear, at least for me, and you guys can tell me what you think out there at 609-403-0973 is the text board. You also can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You guys tell me what you think. But I think it's become pretty obvious that Joel Embiid can't win by himself all the time. You're asking him to save you too often. He's not Michael Jordan. He's not Kobe Bryant. Even Hakeem Olajuwon had help when he was winning those championships with the Rockets. But you're asking Embiid to go out there and do so much on his own, by himself, with no help whatsoever. So when I start hearing rumors about trades now, I'm thinking less about Ben Simmons, and I'm thinking more about Embiid. Daryl Morey and the Sixers have to be concerned that they have a roster that had trouble beating a Hornets team that was down basically half of their roster. Yeah. Gordon Hayward is a former All-Star. He's no more peak Gordon Hayward. He went 1 for 8 from 3 last night. That's not peak Gordon Hayward. Kelly Oubre put up 24 shots in 43 minutes. In large part because Ball was unavailable. Ball is the best player on that team. He's a phenom. He's amazing to watch. But he and a ton of other guys were out. And now they're going to be out again tomorrow night. No LaMelo Ball, no Jalen McDaniels, no Mason Plumlee, no Terry Rozier, no Ish Smith. All ruled out for tomorrow again. So this team, you barely beat by 3 points in overtime. And you have Embiid. You had Tobias Harris. You have Danny Green. You have Seth Curry. The only guys you were really without Shake Milton and Ben Simmons, but without Ben Simmons the whole year. So to me, last night proves the Sixers got to make a move, guys. And to me, like I said, it's less about getting rid of Ben Simmons, and it's more about getting somebody to help Joel. Because this is getting ridiculous. We'll get more into the NBA coming up on the other side. NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson from Bally Sports joins us next, right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Bible with a slam. Matisse Thybulle with a two-hand tomahawk jam.
The Sixers are in Charlotte to face the Hornets. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN being brought to my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Check out the retail sportsbook featuring 5 betting windows, a large video wall, a sports ticker, 20 self-service betting kiosks, and various lounge seats. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet with FanDuel Sportsbook only at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. More NBA talk here. Try to get some clarity on some of the latest news that's been going on. A lot of speculation, a lot of rumor out there going on in the NBA. So the man I trust with my NBA news, he is the one and only Brandon Scoopy Robinson, the man, the myth, the legend himself, joins us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Brandon, my friend, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I rushed in the house after I went to the chiropractor, got me something to eat real quick, and I had to jump on with my guy. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Thanks for having me as always.
I appreciate you jumping on. And I want to start with what I was saying before the break, and that is, to me, where the Sixers are at now, I'm starting to be less concerned about Ben Simmons than I am about Joel Embiid, because the dude's going out there, giving his heart, soul, and guts out there, and they barely beat a Hornets team last night in overtime. That's without basically half their roster. To me, the Sixers' problem isn't Ben Simmons. The Sixers' problem is they don't have enough help for Joel.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look around the league. Many folks say, in order to adequately win anything, you need a three-headed juggernaut, a big three, if you will. Although I do argue that the Lakers, who won in 2020, did it with a dynamic duo in AD and LeBron. But you look at this past NBA Finals, with the Bucks, arguably Chris Middleton, as well as Giannis and former Sixer Drew Holiday was that big three. But with the Sixers, they had a dynamic trio in Tobias, Embiid, and Simmons. And you look at Embiid in and out, Tobias dealing with COVID-19, and Ben Simmons not playing at all. It's a miracle that they are 13 and 11th and 7th or 8th place in the NBA's Eastern Conference. But it's also not a surprise because I look at the standings overall in the Eastern Conference. In the beginning of the season, certain teams started off hot, like the Knicks, who are kind of dwindling a little bit. They play the Spurs tonight, I know. But more specifically to your statement about the Hornets are another team, that started out hot. And, they've had issues with injuries. Now and COVID. Now we're talking about whether or not LiAngelo will be able to move over and play for the Hornets. But really and truly, the Sixers are a mess. And we went from a contender in a space where you look at the Bucks and the Nets, and it's a team trying to make it into the NBA playoffs. So it's a bit disconcerting. And here we are now.
Because we're 7 days away from when teams are allowed to start trading those contracts they signed in the offseason. Explain to the audience a little bit how big that is, because now teams can really start analyzing how they want to make trades, though, right?
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, we're days away from that. Guys who signed in the offseason can now be moved around as well. So it's interesting. You look at some of the names that are out there floating. Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, John Wall. They two of the three are represented by the same agent, and that particular agent, Rich Paul, has a lot to say. He's got a sneaker out now. He's with Adele, and he's taking pictures with Oprah. And at the end of the day, you still have John Wall and Ben Simmons, who Ben is the top paying client, and we have this hiccup in what we're going to do. So I think that's the time where GMs start to really answer their phones and have conversation about various things. So I think a lot of the Timberwolves are busy conversation could potentially, be resurfaced again. For those who aren't familiar, the back and forth with Timberwolves Twitter with myself, it's an interesting contraption, but that's where the Pacers, as it relates to Miles Turner and the Timberwolves, there could be a revisit of a conversation there. So a lot of pieces, a lot of dialogue, and it's interesting.
That would be at Scoop B on Twitter to check all that out. You mentioned the Timberwolves, but to me, any trade that happens involving the Sixers, again, I'm not saying I'm predicting something, but I'm just saying my opinion. I just don't see how it happens team to team. I don't see how you don't get a third or a fourth team involved. I mean, it took Harden to get traded multiple teams. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be the Iguodala Andrew Bynum trade that happened years ago, where there was like almost eight teams involved. But I feel like in this NBA age, the financials don't make sense for teams to make mano-a-mano trades anymore.
No, that's why. It's specifically as it relates to Ben Simmons, I'm sure that's what we're still talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there are so many teams that have inquired. So you look at the Sacramento Kings, for example. There was conversation with the Lakers, as it related to Kyle Kuzma, as it related to Buddy Hield. Just as much as there was interest on the Sixers side and Buddy Hield off and on. The last year and some change. He wants out. Ever since Vlade Divac, they had like a love relationship, but ever since Vlade Divac is out, he wants out. That it's always been, from my understanding, that De'Aaron Fox was untouchable. But then you draft another point guard, so it's like, is he or is he not? And there were conversations about a potential Sacramento Kings swap as it relates to Ben Simmons and what would that entail. Buddy Hield, and it could have been a Laker, particularly because there was conversation with Sacramento, and there was conversation even with Utah during the draft as it pertained to some type of 3-team trade or switch between Utah, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. And ultimately, Kuzma was part of a bigger deal that included the Washington Wizards as well as the Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets. It was a sign and trade which shipped Spencer Dinwiddie to Washington, and the deal was expanded with Brooklyn, where Russell Westbrook went to Los Angeles, and it helped everybody. KCP and Kuzma and Montrezl Harrell got their wish, and they're living their best life in Washington. But more specifically to Ben Simmons, I think ultimately, you're right. So you look at the Clevelands of the world and where they are right now, and this will be a conversation that will legitimately last from that the next week or so when that opens up, all the way to the February deadline, trading deadline. So these are the times where the Cleveland Cavaliers, will look around and what is to be made of Kevin Love, and what's to be made of some of those other guys that are there, specifically because that's 3, 4, 5 position is so largely occupied in Cleveland. You look at the Pacers and their situation, as I mentioned before, Miles Turner. And then you look at John Wall. Will that be a buyout? Will that be a trade outright? I spoke to John Wall last week, and we were just talking about family. He said he's really enjoyed this time away. He's been spending time with his boys, and he's enjoying life. So he's been practicing, but there's a lot going on in Houston as it relates to just his future and his role that is there. But one thing that has been kind of misconstrued is the belief that there's a desire that he wants to be the focal point. I think at this point in his career, he realizes where he is. And he just wants to be on a contender. So, there's a lot to be factored out there. I know a lot of people's wish list is Kyrie for Ben Simmons. In an ideal and perfect world, I don't see that happening. I spoke briefly with Sean Marks via text yesterday after my story that I broke yesterday, more relating to Kyrie Irving and just his wishes and things of that sort. So it'll be a very busy time in front office land for both the Sixers and other teams.
NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Check out all of his work over with Bally Sports. Also follow him on Twitter at ScoopB for all the latest. You mentioned about how some of the teams were interested and have been linked to Ben Simmons. And, I'm looking at the sequence of events. Yesterday, the Shams story comes out. And then I read in The Athletic, I forgot his name already. The guy who covers the Portland Trailblazers for The Athletic, Jason, I think it's Jason Light is actually the guy's name. I was reading his story about CJ McCollum this morning. And then I'm reading Woj's report today. And I'm starting to wonder, I don't know which organization is more of a mess right now. Is it Sacramento or Portland? Because it seems like, you have two organizations that are really rudderless right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I know that Shams' story dropped yesterday in the morning. And then I remember my story about Kyrie dropped in the afternoon. And I remember just going through my phone and communicating with some people in the know in Portland. And it seems as though from my context that, he's trying to say all the right things. And it's most closely painted kind of in the same vein as Kevin Garnett and ultimately him leaving and going to Boston and winning a championship. And, as it relates specifically to Damian Lillard, officials, and I'll say this is something, an ongoing conversation I've had with certain folks at a certain world's most famous arena. And, that he's always been on their list, but it just had to be the right fit. And, they can't openly talk about it because he's still, a member of the Portland Trailblazers. But, I know that it's often been iterated that, Damian Lillard would like to be in New York City because of just the love that he has and respect that he has for that city, but also specifically what it would do for his career overall. But he wants to be in a winning situation. But I think his loyalty is so deep. He's saying the right things, and he's going about it the right way. And I'll add this. If you go back to my reporting in 2019, where I talked about Ben Simmons and him not wanting to be in Philadelphia and him being afraid of the backlash that he would get had he voiced it a certain way, I think it's the same playbook in Portland with Lillard. And this is my opinion. Look at the end result with Ben Simmons. It's about how you go about it. And I feel the same way about Kyrie Irving as it relates to COVID, how you go about your disbelief with it. And I use, Bradley Beal as the comparison. He's not vaccinated. And even in professional football with Lamar Jackson, I think it's how you go about it. But we're specifically talking about Damian Lillard, so I don't want to get off topic. But,
sure,
as it relates to Lillard, I think he's saying the right things. To me, Philadelphia always did make sense. You didn't force me to say that. It just has to be the right fit. I've always felt that the Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard, if you go back to my tweets in the summertime, logically did make sense. But I've also felt as though many people in Portland maybe felt giving up Simmons for Lillard was not a fair exchange. And that maybe the McCollum piece was more to Portland's liking. And I don't think Philly and Portland saw eye to eye on it. That's a combination of just the eye test and folks, my contacts in Philadelphia as well. So I say all of that to say that we're kind of in this logjam, and I think a lot of things will start to make sense in the next couple of weeks transactionally.
By the way, it's Jason Quick is the reporter's name. I totally
Yes,
buy. Jason Light's the GM of the Buccaneers. Jason Quick is the guy who covers the Portland Trailblazers for the Athletic. So
turn on the light quick. I get that.
But the Portland situation is fascinating to me because the whole situation with the Allen family is dealing with all the other assets of Paul Allen after he passed away. They're selling his houses out there. They're not really worried about the Trailblazers. Neil O'Shea's fired. No one really knows who's running the organization. Lillard keeps saying, don't believe anything unless I say it, which is like, okay. The whole thing is just so bizarre because it's almost like with the Green Bay Packers, how the Packers don't actually have an owner. It's owned by basically a bunch of people in the public, right? It feels like Portland has no owner. They have no leadership. They have nobody directing the situation there.
Yeah, it's what I will say reporting wise. I did not read the article that was written in ESPN, but I tend to lean on Chris Haynes' reporting as it relates to Damian Lillard, and respectfully as a colleague, in the same way that I would hope that people would lean on me for anything related to Kyrie Irving specifically. So I have not. I know that I've seen a couple of things that Haynes has written over the last couple of months relating to Lillard, really over the past year, and I tend to lean on him, but we'll see what happens overall. Lillard and the Blazers, I think, have been a long-term marriage, and they have to figure out whether they want to sell a house or live in the house on two different floors at this point. Because I don't see championships being a realistic goal at this point.
No, you're 100% right about that. NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Scoop B on Twitter for all your NBA news, reporting, and everything you need. Also over at Bally Sports. A couple more things before I let you go. First of all the teams that have been, as we call it, linked to Ben Simmons and the Sixers, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Portland, whether it's Sacramento, throw in there. I know New Orleans has called as well. There's reports now that Indiana is talking about blowing things up themselves, right? Of all these teams that have been rumored, who has the most heat on them to do something in the short term?
As far as trade partners go?
Just to do something. Like they have to do something as an organization.
The Timberwolves.
Is that because of the pending ownership change?
I think it's a combination of the pending ownership change. I also think that it's keeping Karl Anthony Towns happy.
Okay.
I was with Karl Wednesday of last week and spent a little bit of time with him. he's living his best life. He's enjoying his role in the Timberwolves uniform. He's saying all the right things. He enjoys his role with D'Angelo Russell. And I know that at some point it's going to be sink or swim on both sides, the Timberwolves and Carl. And, I know just as speaking to various folks around him that they love him. They worship the ground he walks on. But I also know that if he requested a trade today, they would honor his wishes just because they have so much respect for him. And not saying he's asking for it. I'm just saying the magnitude of his leadership and his relationship with the front office. But I think at some point, all of that has to gel and it has to kind of stick together. And I'll add, if you've paid attention to my reporting earlier this year as it related to the Chicago Bulls, more specifically to Lonzo Ball and him ultimately leaving the Pelicans in free agency and signing with the Chicago Bulls. There was a pressure on the Bulls to be successful and to be a formidable team. I think that similar clock is going to be applied to the Minnesota Timberwolves within the next 6 months to a year. And so you got to kind of bring it together. Anthony Edwards is a rising star. D'Angelo Russell puts up stats. I think the addition of Patrick Beverley, although he's out right now, has been brilliant. Great leadership on his side. But and Chris Finch is highly respected. Like, again, going back to my reporting, I know that the Pelicans were somebody that were high on him. And he's worked with guys like Anthony Davis. He comes with at a high recommendation. And he's very respected by NBA elites. So I think for the Timberwolves, I think the pressure's on them. I mean, and I didn't even mention this. You were talking about, or rather we were talking about the Sacramento Kings. I mean, I know that the Pacers have floated around Malcolm Brogdon, who I think would be a blue-collar version of Ben Simmons. No comparison, but a blue-collar version that would benefit Philadelphia greatly. I think that there's just no direction, more specifically just because of ownership. Like, I know that people who have gone through interview processes in Indiana have kind of been off-put over the last couple of years in head coach hirings by just the level of questioning that's been asked by those up top. And ultimately, in some circles, it's believed that is why Victor Oladipo wanted out. And if you pay attention to my reporting, the Miami Heat was highly coveting him, dating all the way back to the bubble. So I don't think there's a pressure on the Pacers because I don't know that the Pacers know what they want to do right now. But I think that the pressure is going to be on Minnesota pretty soon, similarly to the way it was with the Bulls last season into this season.
And by the way, the only person allowed to mix up the Ball brothers is me. I have a patent and a claim to mixing up LaMelo and Lonzo. Okay, I'm the expert at that. All right, so leave that to me.
And I done it in tweets. They done told me, yo, you. I'm like, man, like it's one of those things, man. It's they can never confuse Harvey and Horace, but LaMelo and Lonzo, they can.
No, absolutely. Well, because also, everyone knew that Horace was a lot better than Harvey. So
that part.
No one was confusing Harvey's game for Horace's game.
Right. just the goggles.
Just the goggles, right. Before I let you go, because you did write that extensive report about Kyrie, you mentioned Bradley Beal and his vaccination status. Obviously, the whole vaccination situation has come into hyper focus even more now with this Toronto situation starting in January. They're not going to allow people in if they're not vaccinated. They don't have certain permissions and clearances. And now this is the same day that another court has shot down the government's mandates on these vaccinations. So the whole vaccination situation is in massive flux right now. I got to ask you, is there a part of guys like Kyrie and Beal that maybe says, hey, man, I'm just going to stay in my lane and I'm not going to, play games with this because let everybody else figure this stuff out?
I don't have as strong of a relationship with Bradley Beal. I actually met him for the first time in October, and we vibed very well. I saw him last week at a game, but I know Kyrie, and I know that with him, I think he's pretty much been put his drew a line in the sand as it relates to just the long-term effects. And I know that ultimately, I mean, I'll be honest with you, even from a perspective of within the organization, the Nets organization, one of his closest friends was hired as an assistant coach. I believe in more so in the player development. He also was not vaccinated, and the Nets let him go because of that mandate. And I also think it's locale. What happens in Washington, D.C. is different than what happens in the 5 boroughs of New York City.
Sure.
And so for Kyrie, it was more of a matter of the combination of New York City's mandates and the Nets ultimately saying we didn't want a part-time player. But the crazy part about it is Bradley Beal, who plays for the Wizards, can play at Madison Square Garden or the Barclays Center as an opponent. So it gets tricky. Like it's one of those things that maybe it's not for us to understand. Toronto, I'm not really surprised because that's the reason why the Raptors ultimately played in Tampa.
Right.
So I lean on how other countries base their situation based off of conversations that I've had with people overseas, like Stephon Marbury, who's in China, who shared with me that the provinces in China are like states in the US, and every province follows the same mandates and protocols. So what happens in North Carolina is the same comparatively to what happens in New Jersey, that happens in Texas, that happens in Oklahoma, that happens in Indianapolis. And I think, me personally, this is my opinion, I feel like if we had kind of followed similar things, maybe we wouldn't be in this position. But that's why, I guess, why I'm a journalist and not a scientist, because, everybody has their own opinion.
Well, at the end of the day, we all know the biggest problem in the world we live in is a lack of leadership, but that's another story for another day.
For a different day.
He is NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson. You see that background behind him over on YouTube, Bally Sports. Check out all the content. Also, check out the awesome interview he had with Super Bowl legend Doug Williams as well. A lot of great stuff in that interview with the Super Bowl MVP award winner. And of course, all of his content at Bally Sports. Follow him on Twitter at Scoop B. Also, Instagram. You can check him out at Scoop B as well. And he joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Brandon, my friend, I always appreciate you jumping on. You look classy as always. I'm liking the jacket you got over there. Good stuff, my friend.
Brother, I literally, this is the jacket I had on from going outside. I wasn't being fashionable, but when you text me and asked me on, I wanted to make sure that I made myself available. But more than anything else, thank you for the opportunity to be myself.
Thank you for joining the show today. Take care, my friend. Be in touch.
My man, I'll talk to you.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Always great insights and content from the NBA insider, Brandon Scoop B Robinson. All right, on the other side, we'll get to your guys' thoughts and comments. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
The 2021 Jimmy V Classic.
Yes!
Live from Madison Square Garden in New York City. Tennessee, Texas Tech, followed by Villanova, Syracuse. The college basketball season continues tonight, exclusively on your home for the NCAA tournament. 97.3 ESPN FM. Coverage begins at 7 p.m.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan. Looking for some holiday cash? Then don't miss Matt Blatt Nissan's holiday vehicle buyback. It doesn't matter what you drive. AJ the Trademan wants to buy your vehicle today. Regardless of the make, miles, condition, or situation, AJ will buy your ride for cash today. That's right, AJ at Matt Blatt Nissan will buy your vehicle for cash today. Treat yourself to a brand new Nissan. Like Zip, zero, zilch, zero down, zero payments, zero interest on every new Matt Blatt Nissan. That's a brand new Nissan with 0% financing, 0 payments for 90 days, and 0 money down. And AJ says you'll get more cash than you think and drive away with peace of mind because only Matt Blatt Nissan has a 4-day love it or leave it return policy. MattBlattNissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on $27.77 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to MattBlattNissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 1/5/2022. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night being brought to you by friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. NBA action tonight, Army Navy this weekend. The NFL, of course, Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. You can get in on all the action at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's hear from you guys before we get out of here on 97.3 ESPN. Chiming in is Tom from Margate, says Josh Villanova plays Syracuse at MSG tonight. I'll sip some peanut butter whiskey. And I agree 100% with you. Sixers need help for Joel. Maybe they should try ZipRecruiter for a Jimmy Buckets type score. That's from Tom in Margate. First of all, you can also hear Villanova versus Syracuse. They are the second game of our college basketball doubleheader right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Tonight, coverage begins at 7 o'clock. So we get the Jimmy V Classic games, what Tom's referring to. Listen, they do need a Jimmy Butler type of scorer. I agree. The problem is that you have to convince a team to be willing to part with a guy like that. I think that's really where the rub is. You got to convince a team, because teams always want high-level scorers because they need – the NBA is built on guys getting their own shot, being able to score. The best teams have three players. The best teams have a guy who can create his own shot, a guy who can hit threes consistently, and a guy who is either unstoppable at something. He's unstoppable distributor. He's unstoppable post player. He's an unstoppable whatever, So I think that's part of the problem. The Sixers don't have a guy who can get his own shot consistently, which is where the next text comes in at 609-403-0973. Text says, will we ever get Anthony Edwards? Because obviously if we could trade Ben Simmons for him, that would be highway robbery. I think that's part of the problem. And that is, and I'm just basing it on everything we've heard and read from reporting out there, Texter, and that is, if you base everything we know about the reports out there, from NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson to Woj of ESPN, to Shams, to Chris Haynes, it seems like there's a pattern here. And the pattern is teams didn't want to give up their best asset in a Ben Simmons trade. But now, as you heard Brandon talk about just a few minutes ago, a team like the Timberwolves feels they have to do something soon. A team like Portland is a dumpster fire right now. Sacramento is a mess right now. Desperate teams make desperate moves. And in my opinion, I think that a desperate team is going to be the team that steps up. So if Minnesota is desperate enough, they'll ask for Ben Simmons. Can they get Ben Simmons? I don't know. I think that the problem with Ben Simmons is his value has been damaged because of his own behavior and his own handling of his business. But I think there's going to be a team that is going to have to pay something for him. Now, we know that CJ McCollum is no longer protected in Portland. Neil O'Shea is out. He was fired. He's the guy who loved CJ McCollum. Well, he was the guy who kept them from trading CJ McCollum for Drew Holiday. Then Drew Holiday went to the Bucks, and then the Bucks won the NBA championship. You have to wonder, is CJ McCollum available for trade? CJ for Ben Simmons might not be what the Sixers want. Anthony Edwards would be much more in the realm of what the Sixers want. But is Minnesota willing to give up that guy to get someone who Karl Anthony Towns likes in Ben Simmons? It's going to be an interesting thing to see play out. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.